All right, so thanks everyone for joining. We can go ahead and get started. It looks like not the biggest turnout today, maybe due to a lot of the usual crowd being at a big conference going on right now. But I think we could probably briefly run through the full update anyway, tee up a topic that I think will be helpful for discussion. And then, the recording will be available online for anyone that wants to catch up later. Probably won't take the full hour. So as a reminder, this is a quarterly live peer open community call where we just do a focus on a project update at a high level. We're open for Q&A for a discussion topic or two. And then we have separate calls where we dive deep into issues facing node operators and deep into a specific topic that's really timely for the community. So each month there's one of these calls. The call is live, it's live streamed at livepeer.org/TV, and it's being recorded. So if you participate, just know that you're going to be visible on the recording. Cool, okay. So the agenda for today is I'm going to give a LivePeer network update and the latest stats, share some updates on LivePeer.com product. Then the topic I wanted to cover is a kind of important upcoming priority for the LivePeer project that I think the whole community needs to be involved in, and have some discussion around that for anyone that wants to discuss the topic live. And then time for open Q&A, if any. All right, so what's going on the LivePeer network? It's actually been a big quarter. We now have 2,853 actively delegating accounts on LivePeer. This is up almost 200 from last quarter, up 195. Even bigger news, we have 100 active orchestrators on the network. There's up 21 from last quarter. There's 100 slots, so it's actually now competitive to break into the active orchestrator set. You need more and more stake in order to break into the set and to become participating. So this is a really nice milestone. So rather than tracking the number of active orchestrators going forward, I think we want to look at the number of active orchestrators that are actually performing above a certain threshold through all the performance testing, so we can measure how many are really positively contributing to the transcoding on the network. We have a 49% participation rate, down 4% from last quarter. And so that's actually an interesting number, because for those of you who don't know, when the participation rate is below 50%, that means that every day the number of LivePeer tokens that get minted grows. The inflation rate grows a little bit. When we're over 50%, it shrinks a little bit. So for the first 2 years of the protocol, we saw the first year and a half of the protocol, we saw pretty fast growth until we hit the 50% number. For the next year or so, it had been coming down, and then for the last couple of months, we're at this really interesting spot where we've bounced around this 50% number. Some days it's above, some days it's below, and therefore you see the inflation rate kind of grow a little bit, go down a little bit, grow a little bit, go down a little bit, and it's kind of finding an equilibrium, at least for the current moment. So it'll be interesting to see if that equilibrium holds and the inflation rate stays pretty steady, or if we swing to one side of participation here. Down below, you see the Scout dashboard that shows currently there's 11.9 million tokens bonded out of 23.9 million tokens overall, and each day, or today at least, there's 4,626 new LPT minted and distributed to, or available to be minted and be distributed to delegators if all nodes call reward. Cool. Really great growth on this metric, the number of minutes streamed through the network per week. It's actually the most important network that our community focuses on, because it shows the real usage and utility of our network. 2 weeks ago, we hit this 2.4 million minutes of unique input video transcoded by the network in a given week. I think that was the highest point we've hit. Last quarter, the weekly high was 495,000. So you see it's almost a 5x growth from the quarter before. And if you look at the quarter before that, I think that the high point was somewhere around a couple 100,000. So This is great. This has been driven by a bunch of adoption through LivePeer.com and other people testing the network through direct Web3 integrations. And I think if we stay focused on this metric and continue on a path of growth, it leads to more and more fees and more competition to earn those fees, and a really healthy video encoding network. As far as fees, last week there was, fees are paid in ETH, but the US dollar equivalent was 7,539 dollars in fees, I believe. The weekly high last quarter was approaching $4,000 in fees. And I think the weekly high, I don't have it here, but somewhere above $10,000 in fees a few weeks ago. It's interesting. These two charts aren't exactly the same. You see a big growth in the number of minutes. You see the fees being a little more lumpy. This is affected by a couple of things. One is that payments in LivePeer are probabilistic. They occur with a certain probability, but on occasion you'll get a bunch of lumpy winning tickets cashed in a given week, and then maybe fewer in the next week. So that's one factor. Another factor is this depends on the price that broadcasters are paying into the network. And I think when there was less work in the early days and during bootstrapping, LivePeer.com was paying a higher price for transcoding, but then with greater competition and more work flowing in, the price it's paying is a little bit more competitive. So that's come down. And then finally, because fees are paid in ETH, but we're kind of showcasing the value in dollars, as you've seen the price of ETH fluctuate, which it's fluctuated a lot over the past few months. You don't see broadcasters repricing their fees they're paying, and as a result, you see the kind of dollar value grow in sync in correlation with Ethereum. That may not, that shouldn't be the case long term with a more efficient market, but for now, it's one of the effects that explains a little bit of the difference. But one of the great things that these fees have resulted in is that you actually see both incredible competition, but also cooperation among the orchestrators that are running on the network to, earn these fees and to help others earn their first fees so they can be activated and really become bought into this network as well. And even with this volume, I think you've seen a bunch of people, truly be rewarded, cover their costs, pay off their equipment, and get a sense for what's possible as the usage on the network grows. So that's been exciting. Another network highlight has been in the past quarter has been kind of increasing access to LivePeer token and liquidity. For a very long time, as we've been building out this network, improving its actual use, we didn't focus very much on this area, knowing that as there was real demand, as we showcased a crypto-based network that was providing real utility, that then would be kind of the exchanges would come and make the token available to their users so they could participate in the network. And sure enough, that has happened in the last quarter with LivePeer available through Binance and Coinbase and Gemini and Kraken and a number of other global access points, which is great. And then you see kind of significantly increased liquidity on the token as well, which is great for node operators that might need to cash out in order to cover their costs, or those who want to acquire a token to participate in the network. So it's been another nice highlight for the quarter. We don't talk a lot about price. We think long-term price of the token will be derived from its usage, the amount of fees flowing through, and the ultimate value of the network. It is interesting to note, all of this increasing access and liquidity, didn't help the LivePeer token price. Kind of an interesting case study, because for many projects, as they get added to these platforms, you do see kind of a favorable price action. So again, focused on the long term, focused on usage and utility, and value of the token would follow from the fees that could be earned. Cool. On the collaborations front, one project we've collaborated a lot with is The Graph. They have a great network for indexing blockchain data and making it easily queryable so you can build your applications. LivePeer Explorer is built using the LivePeer subgraph, and a lot of the pricing info that powers some of the tools in the ecosystem is pulled out of data indexed on the subgraph. And this project, The Graph, actually launched their mainnet and has a decentralized network for making this data and available. LivePeer was one of their 10 protocols that were their launch partners and available on their network from day one. And on the Graphs network, their token holders actually have the job of curating which of these subgraphs happen to be legitimate, valuable, and should be indexed by the nodes on their network. They're basically signaling which ones are valuable. And it's interesting and worthwhile to note that LivePeer is the subgraph that has by far the most signal on their network. So their token holders have all indicated that, hey, this is a project that's doing a lot of querying. They have good reputable data. If you index this, you'll be rewarded. And Web3 needs this data indexed and widely available to kind of push its mission forward. And so it's been really nice to see that community support LivePeer. Likewise, kind of on the Web3 front, we've been working with other projects on kind of pushing the whole Web3 infrastructure movement forward. We think that now this stack for developers that can actually build on decentralized infrastructures is now emerging and is ready to be built upon. And you see projects like the Graph, projects like Arweave for file storage, Filecoin and Saya. Helium is building a network for bandwidth exchange and connectivity. There's other compute platforms. We think these are all work networks where developers are paying to use the underlying infrastructure services that the network provide. And they're not DeFi, they're not NFTs, they're not layer one blockchains, they're their own thing. It's Web3 infrastructure. And there's this open project and community called Web3 Index, where all these projects are being showcased, their revenue is being shown, so you can see who's actually paying to use them. And people can have a view into what's going on in this ecosystem. And it's in beta right now. There's 4 projects on there. As soon as it hits 6 projects, it'll go live. There's a light governance mechanism for adding new projects and keeping this maintained. And I think it's exciting because I think Web3 will be kind of the next trend that emerges out of blockchain, and LivePeer is well positioned to be the video layer. Cool. All right. I'm looking at my presentation here. So if people are asking questions in the chat or want to jump in, don't feel free to interrupt me. I'm happy to pause and answer questions as we go, but otherwise I'll press on. Cool. Here's a couple of product updates out of livepeer.com. So for those who don't know, livepeer.com is like a hosted gateway. It's an API that lets video developers use LivePeer without having to know about running nodes or blockchain or paying with cryptocurrencies or any of the complexity that a video developer wouldn't know about. Our transcoding network is kind of the core value proposition that LivePeer brings. It's where we make the biggest difference to people who need to do a lot of transcoding. But livepeer.com actually lets users build end-to-end streaming applications or just point and click and go live with live streams as well, which is a great way to get started. So a couple of product updates there. And by the way, why is this relevant? I mean, it's driving a lot of the usage onto the LivePeer network right now, and that's its purpose, right? If it packages all of this up and makes it easy, then we can onboard a lot of developers. They can use the LivePeer network under the hood, and our node operators will have plenty of work to do. So there's a couple new releases. There's a brand new dashboard that looks really nice, makes it easy for developers to get started, see what's happening with their streams and manage their applications. Anyone can sign up for an API key and get started for free up to 1,000 minutes a month of streaming. So I recommend people check it out, even if they just want to do a point and click stream to see what the experience is. There's some developer features that have been released. Webhooks, this lets developers be notified when streams start, when streams end, when streams go idle, so that in their applications they can take the specific actions. A number of other technical features as well. And there's been some recent case studies published. One from a gaming streaming site, esports streaming site called Vim.tv. Where they use LivePeer to enable transcoding inside their game streaming platform. Something that looks like Twitch, but more crypto native, crypto centric, and aiming to provide better economics for the game streamers. And then there's a social live shopping application called Corkumo, which is also live on LivePeer, and there's a case study there, and they let e-commerce vendors and store owners go live with live streams in order to market and sell their products. And this is, an area with huge potential. It's a huge trend in Asia. It's a huge trend in India, and it's starting to grow and gain in popularity in Europe and the United States as well. I'm so excited to add kind of these public case studies to the LivePeer user base. A couple features that are coming soon: stream health metrics, and we're early in pilots for AI-based scene classification. This is something that can help these user-generated content platforms tremendously. If our GPUs that are encoding video can at the same time perform AI tasks to identify, is this video likely to be adult content? Is this video likely to be Premier League soccer, which is a common source of abuse on UGC streaming platforms that lead to high CDN bills? Is this likely to be violent content, something that needs to be moderated? The alternative to this is people need humans watching all of these streams, or they risk exposing their users to inappropriate content. If you can use AI to assist in that process and to flag things that might need human attention or should be blocked from the platform, it's really the only economically viable way to do it if you're running a user-generated content platform. I'm so excited to add this capability to the network as well. Great. So that's the LivePeer.com product update. Kind of the last topic that I had, I wanted to be more of a discussion, and I'm going to tag in another team member, Yandin, to showcase some data here. But I wanted to talk about one of the important priorities that I think the project as a whole should focus on tackling. And the mission here is that we want to be able to get more LivePeer token into the hands of effective node operators. We're seeing, there's over 50 nodes on the network that are performing on the leadership scoreboard, but less than 20 of them are able to make the reward call each day to earn the LivePeer token that they should be earning. And this is due to a number of reasons. It's due to the high cost of calling reward because of high Ethereum gas prices. It's because not enough stake has been attracted to these nodes, even though they may be earning fees and helping the network a lot. It's for delegators, there's a high cost of switching, and they might not even be aware that they could be getting a better return by delegating towards these high performing nodes. And it's actually it's better for them because they're helping the network. They're helping activate these high performing nodes. And it would just be great to have the high performers on our network as larger LPT holders. So bigger stakeholders in this network, long-term committed, wanting to see the network do well, and keep their compute power here instead of take it to other networks and other tasks. So I think this should be a huge community effort over the coming months. I think if we all work together, we can solve this. I have some ideas about how we can think about solving this. Before I do that, I might want to kick it over to Yandin, who can share some data that he's been observing and collecting about how nodes can cost effectively get LPT and call reward. Yandin, you want to take it away?
Sure. So lately the first thing that at least I've been prioritizing and that we've been prioritizing is surfacing more information that can be helpful for orchestrators to determine when it is profitable to call reward, and also surfacing more information about that aspect of the network over time, because then we can start to see, as we progress and as updates are made to the network, how does that impact the number of orchestrators that can actually profitably call reward. So as a part of that, I've been working on a small dashboard that surfaces some relevant information there. So I'm going to share my screen and give everyone a preview of that. All right, so if people can see my screen, what I have in front of me right now is a Dune Analytics dashboard. So for those that are not familiar, Dune Analytics is this handy blockchain data querying tool that allows you to build various graphs and tables using data that they've indexed for various contracts, smart contracts deployed on Ethereum. So they've indexed a bunch of data for the LivePeer smart contracts deployed on Ethereum, so made use of the data available here. So the two graphs that I draw attention to are the first one in the top left corner, this minimum stake in the current round graph, and the second one right below it, so this minimum stake per round graph. So I'll talk about the first one, the minimum stake in the current round graph. So what this graph shows us is that it gives us, as of the current round, it gives us an estimate of what the minimum stake required, minimum total stake required for an orchestrator in order to profitably call reward, depending on what reward cut that orchestrator has set. So just as a reminder, the LPT rewards that an orchestrator is entitled to, or the LPT rewards that an orchestrator can mint in any given round, is going to be based on that orchestrator's total stake relative to the stake of all orchestrators on the network. So if an orchestrator has 5% of the total stake on the network, it would be able to mint the equivalent of 5% of the total inflationary supply for that round. So that's why we care about what that total stake value is for that orchestrator, because it's going to impact how many rewards it can actually mint. And the reward cut matters here because the reward cut is going to dictate how much of those rewards that are minted are actually going to be set aside for the orchestrator. We'll ignore the rewards that the orchestrator is entitled to based on its own self-delegated stake for now, but that data could also be incorporated into this calculation process if needed. But for now, we'll focus on that portion set aside by the reward cut from the new LPT rewards that would be minted by an orchestrator. So what this graph shows us is the data that the graph uses under the hood is what it does is it takes the median gas price for the current round, and it uses that to estimate what the theoretical transaction cost, what the theoretical US dollar transaction cost would be for calling reward in this round. And it also estimates the USD value of the LPT rewards that would be minted and set aside for an orchestrator based on its reward cut. And we've done this for various reward cut values ranging from 100% to 50%, all the way down to 5% and 1%. And what the graph does with the data under the hood is it says, what is the minimum stake that this orchestrator would need to have, or an orchestrator would need to have, given this reward cut value, in order for that reward call to actually be profitable? Meaning that the USD value of the LPT rewards for that reward cut actually equal or exceed the transaction cost for calling reward, because otherwise it wouldn't make economic sense for that orchestrator to call reward at all. So what we have here is we can see here at 1% reward cut, this is the rightmost bar, and the leftmost bar is at 100% reward cut, meaning that the orchestrator takes everything and is not giving any rewards to its delegators. So as is expected, the minimum stake required at a reward cut of 100% is going to be substantially smaller than the minimum stake when your reward cut is much lower, something like 1%. And what this tells us is that there's a range of reward cut values that an orchestrator can set, and that's going to impact what the total stake that orchestrator needs to have in order for that reward call to be profitable. So the hope for this graph is and in subsequent iterations, is that it can help illustrate to current or even new orchestrators when it can be profitable for them to call reward, such that they can start increasing their LPT ownership. And it can also tell them what the total stake that they might need at any given point in time in order to make those profitable reward calls, at least in the current round. So that's this first graph in the left hand, on the left hand side, on the upper left hand side. So I'll pause there before giving a brief overview of the second graph in case anyone has any questions or comments there.
Can you hover over the values and just maybe share, approximately the amount of stake required at given reward cuts?
Yep. So with this graph, we can see that at 100% reward cut, so if an orchestrator takes all of the rewards, the minimum stake required, or an estimate of it right now, is around 29,000, around 29,000, oh, not 29,000, around 2,900 LPT if it had a reward cut of 100%. If that reward cut was reduced to 50%, meaning that the orchestrator would split the rewards 50-50 with its delegators, then that minimum stake goes up to 5,900 LPT of stake. And on the more extreme end, if the orchestrator was only taking 1% of the rewards, then it's substantially larger. It's a magnitude increase relative to 100%, where we're actually looking at a minimum stake of around 296,000. So yeah, we can see here that as you reduce your reward cut, the minimum stake that you would need to have as an orchestrator in order for it to be profitable for you to call reward, given that reward cut and that reward cut that you're taking, that minimum stake is going to increase. But you have some flexibility here based on what reward cut that you set. And this is also going to be impacted by a number of other factors such as LPT price, ETH price, as well as the gas price on the Ethereum network. So when the gas price is lower, then the minimum stake is going to be lower. And days when the gas price is higher, the minimum stake is going to be higher.
Thanks, Shandon. And yeah, I don't know what like average market is on the network off the top of my head, but if it's in that 5 to 10% range, then you can see, you're looking at 30 to 60,000 LPT delegated before it's profitable, and that's the challenge that I was kind of speaking about initially. Is what can we do to ensure that either you can dramatically reduce that number so people need less stake in order to be calling reward profitably. That could be done through scaling efforts, or how can we make it easier such that enough stake moves on to the high performing nodes such that they have more stake than that and can profitably call reward.
Yep, good point. And just to wrap things up, I'll highlight the second graph briefly. And the second graph is basically an extension of the first graph, except it has historical data. So it shows us the minimum stake at various reward cut values over time in the past 30 rounds. And you can see here that for each round, there's individual bars representing each of the reward cut values, and you're able to filter for specific reward cut values if you just want to see, let's say, the 1% reward cut value, or the 5% reward cut value, or the 100% reward cut value. So you're able to do that, and I'll leave that for people to play around with separately. I'll drop a link to this in Discord. But I think the thing to highlight here, and this just illustrates a point that has already been made, we can just look at the minimum stake when the reward cut is 100%. And we can see it kind of varies over time, where there was a peak in, it looks like around 2,217. And it was actually much lower in the rounds before that. And in the recent rounds, it's been somewhere in the middle. And once again, this could be due to a number of factors, but I believe when I was looking at this data, at least in the earlier rounds, the median gas price for those rounds had been slightly lower than the median gas prices in more recent rounds. So that's just going to reflect a lower transaction cost for calling reward and therefore a lower minimum stake requirement. So you can actually see that being visualized here. So just wanted to highlight that. This gives us a historical view of the minimum stake over time. So that might be helpful for people if they want to see how that's changing over time. And as we get into the next discussion of how we can make improvements to allocating LPT to more top performers, this could be a useful graph to keep an eye on as well. So that's it for me. And I think I'm all set with this dashboard. So I will drop a link to that to Discord and happy to continue the conversation there.
Yeah, thanks, John. And I think it's definitely a really useful tool. That 100% reward cut could give people the idea of, hey, how much stake do I actually need to acquire myself just to ensure my own profitability? And then the charts that show, oh, if I have a 5% or 10% reward cut, how much delegation should I attract if I'm not going to have any stake myself on the node? And both those can be really useful. Cool. Okay, so just to wrap up, I have like one or two more slides here. Let's see. Reshare my screen. Right, so we want to get more LPT into the hands of effective node operators. We just talked about how much LPT is required to attract in delegation at the under current gas prices or at different gas prices. What else can we do to fix this? And I think there's a couple different angles through we can approach this. As I mentioned, we can either reduce the cost of reward calls so that you need far less stake in order to call reward profitably, or you can encourage more stake to move towards those who are performing highly on the network and earning fees. And in reality, you want probably a combination of both of these to really be optimal. So, how can we as a community accomplish those two things? I don't think there's any one silver bullet solution. I think it's a combination of many different techniques. One technique is layer 2 scaling, right? If it costs, $30 US worth of ETH to call reward, you need to be able to earn a 3 LPT in order to be profitable there. But if we can reduce the cost so it's nearly free and cost almost only a couple cents of a layer 2 token in order to call reward, then all of a sudden so many more nodes can do it even with less stake and still be profitable, right? So that's a no-brainer, but that's clearly a lot of work and doesn't happen overnight, right? The second approach you can take is you can actually make product updates. One idea is to showcase yield opportunities for staking and to maybe package up the returns people could be getting by moving stake towards high-performing node operators. I know there's a lot of high-performing node operators that share a lot of the fees that they're earning back to delegators. And if they're earning a lot of fees, if they're earning hundreds of dollars in fees a week, and they're sharing the majority of that to delegators, and there's not a lot of delegators on that, then delegators should be moving their token and staking towards those nodes. They're going to get a better yield. But right now, there's no kind of productization that showcases that highlights who's performing really well and earning fees in a way that actually generates action amongst token holders. I think if you look at the current Explorer, you would say someone really diligent that understood the network and had a calculator or pen and paper on the side doing calculations could figure this out. But that's totally different than making it a product that makes it an obvious no-brainer for a token holder to show up and move token towards those who are performing really highly, sharing fees back, and that would really encourage a lot of stake movements, right? And so I think there's a lot we can do from a product perspective to do that. And that might be in the Explorer, that might be a completely one-off spreadsheet or application or one-page app or something that serves just that single purpose that actually becomes a really important or effective tool for token holders. Another idea is just kind of community and communication effort. I think if we all recognize this is a priority, this is really important for the product to succeed, and the community comes together to highlight specific nodes that are helping the network a lot, that are deserving of stake. They make that really visible. We summarize it via nice forum posts and blog posts, and share it on social media, share it to the community. That I think just operationally would make it easier for people to say, oh, I can help the network by staking towards this node, and my return will be better. I will go through the operational effort to do that, right? And just with enough kind of work and pull, you can get people to act in their own self-interest, but you need to make it easy for them. And then lastly, we can consider more drastic things like protocol updates through governance that actually create pools of token for fee earners, route token towards fee owners and high performing nodes. I think there's a lot of challenges to solve there. You get into all sorts of risks around self-dealing and gaming and abusing those systems. But maybe there's lighter mechanisms where there's tokens allocated into a pool where committee gives out rewards to high performing nodes for some period of time, just to help with this bootstrapping challenge until we have layer 2 scaling in place, right? There's a lot that could be done. But really the last point here, like, we need each other's help here. This is not one specific effort. We need ideas, we need community momentum and buy-in and contribution towards any of these efforts. But I think it'll definitely be worthwhile if we can make all the high performing node operators big LPT holders at this stage. So let's get creative. I started a forum post, forum.livepeer.org, to begin discussing this, and definitely welcome ideas, comments, suggestions on there. So I think there and the Discord will be good places to push the discussion forward. Cool. Anyone want to share anything on this topic before I move on? I just have one last slide, then we'd be wrapping up. Oh, is that Dion, are you saying something? We're not hearing you. Got the mute, the unmute, technical difficulties.
Yeah, there we go. Can you hear me now?
There we go. Yeah.
Thanks so much. Question for the reducing of the gas fees for the daily reward calls. Would that be something simple and can be done effectively and quickly, or is that again a protocol change or a code change that would take a long time to implement, or L2 solutions would come quicker? How would that look?
Right. There was one proposal that's still out there, though. I think there was some kind of technical accounting difficulties that we could do through governance, which would make it wouldn't reduce the fees for any given reward call, but it would make it so you'd only call reward once per week or some time period. And then you'd get, if it's once per week, you get 7 times the rewards during that period. And so that could make it, 7 times more cost effective. That was meant as a stopgap solution. And I think it hasn't pushed forward with a lot of momentum because it was a stopgap and because there was some other, technical accounting difficulties that it created. I think ultimately some sort of like layer 2 scaling approach would be the thing that would really provide the huge order of magnitude impact here. But and that's like ongoing work and research and is a goal. But that's a big shift where all the node operators would have to be upgraded, talking to a layer 2 network. There'd have to be some migration of state onto layer 2 network and solve the bridging to let people move their value in and out of layer 2. So that's all work in progress, but it's not going to be here next week, right?
Fair enough. Yeah, thank you very much for answering that. The last question I had would be then, would there be an opportunity to explore different blockchains that offer faster services, or is LivePeer mostly, I guess, dedicated to Ethereum and the Ethereum network?
That's part of the layer 2 research is looking. Layer 2 is kind of the catch-all term here, but it's looking at various scaling solutions that are available. LivePeer is pretty committed to EVM, committed to the ETH ecosystem pretty generally. But the varying layer 2 projects have kind of different levels of connectedness, if you will, and the research I think has led us towards ones that are pretty ETH compatible. Cool. Thanks for the questions. So yeah, the last slide I had was just highlighting some of the other priorities that are kind of also in flight. Continuing research and rollout of additional capabilities. I mentioned the AI-based tasks and the exploration into how we could use our network to assist in content delivery, both super promising and huge market expanding capabilities that could lead to a lot more work and fees for those who are operating nodes. Potentially with different skill sets for different types of node operators, ones that may rely more on AI tasks are very similar to the transcoding. The content delivery coordination may be something that could be performed with a CPU, most likely, but also bring additional work to the network. Cool. Secondly, continuing to focus on driving demand through the .com API first and foremost, but also more interestingly through exploring Web3 ecosystem integrations. I mentioned Web3 Index and this emerging Web3 stack. You see a lot happening in the creator economy and NFT space where live streaming can play a role. And so, we definitely want those sorts of applications to be built on LivePeer, and are collaborating and talking with other projects focused on that to see if there's good integration points. And then, as we just mentioned, continuing to focus on scaling and cost effectiveness of the LivePeer network as well. So a lot of different tracks of work, but it's been really exciting this last quarter to see kind of the rise of awareness of LivePeer through a bunch of the kind of exchange and liquidity opportunities, which has led to a lot of node operators joining the network, competing for these fees that are being driven through LivePeer.com and elsewhere. And it feels like we have a really good, solid base to really capture this opportunity to be the world's open video infrastructure, because we have a working, functioning network. We're already doing many more multiples in fees than a lot of other Web3 infrastructure protocols, which are all going to also play critical roles, but have a great kind of case study and use case to show that Web3 infrastructure can be cost effective, can be scalable, can work globally. So a lot more work to do, but it's been an exciting quarter, and I definitely look forward to the next 3 to 6 months as we solve these scaling issues, can get LPT into the hands of all the high performing node operators, and add more capabilities to the network. Great. So that's all I've got. Does anyone else have any questions or topics that they wanted to discuss on the call? All right. So if no other questions, then we'll break now. We'll be back next month on a topic specific call hosted by Nelson. We'll see what the topic on everyone's mind is at that point, and dive in. And in the meantime, this is recorded. It'll be up shortly, and we can pick up the conversation in the Discord and forum on the high priority issues that I talked about. So thanks a lot, everyone. Take care.